right, UFC 322 full card predictions, going from the early prelim opener until the main event and the main card. All right, first fight of the card. I'm going to go through the early ones quick because I got a lot to say about the later fights. So we've got Viacheslav Borshchev versus Matheus Camilo. This fight got made only a couple days ago. I'm going to go with Camilo. I don't know if Camilo is necessarily the better fighter. Like, I don't know if I would pick him if the circumstances were different. But, he had a fight with Abdul Karim El Sawadi that was supposed to go on, and it got canceled. And that was only supposed to be like a couple weeks ago. So I'm sure he's been training since then. He had a camp before then. I don't think it was a full 8-week camp, but I think it was 4 or 5 weeks. So by now he's had 7 weeks to prepare for a fight. And Borshchev, I don't know how prepared he stays in the off season, but I don't think he's going to be as prepared as a guy who's been in camp pretty recently. And also Camilo seems like a decent grappler. He's got a couple submissions on his record. He did get submitted by Gabe Green in his last fight, which I don't love because I don't think Gabe Green is that good. But I think he's a decent enough grappler, and Borshchev has really struggled in the grappling in his recent couple fights. His last two were against McKinney and Chase Hooper, and in the Chase Hooper fight, he got dropped and then dominated in the first round. In the second round, he didn't even get dropped. He just got taken down and controlled in dominant positions for the whole fight, and then he got put in a darce. He didn't even tap. He just kind of posted, and the ref thought he tapped and called it a fight, but he was getting dominated very clearly. A pretty clear 10-8 in the first round, on his way to a 10-8 in the second round. Or maybe it was the third round, whatever. He was dominated. He was getting dominated the whole fight. And then McKinney went out there. I can't remember if he took him down or how he got to the ground, but he immediately put him in submission in the first minute and finished him. I don't know if Camilo's going to finish him right away, but I think he can easily out-grapple him, especially when he's not going to be conditioned. And I can see Borshchev gassing out later in the fight. And he's not bad when he's gassed out. He's had some success, in the later rounds. Against Sadikov, he looked pretty good in the third. And he's had a couple fights in his career where later in the fight he looks pretty good. But this is a short notice. He's not going to be conditioned. If he gasses out, he's going to be easier to take down. So I think Camilo will win this pretty easily. Next we have the card, Baisangur Susurkaev versus Eric McConico. I don't think McConico is that good. Beating Brundage is not the worst. I mean, it's obviously a win. A win's a win. But Brundage is not the hardest guy to beat. He's not a very good fighter. And also beating Brundage and it not being a fluke I feel like that makes it even worse somehow. I don't know. I feel like Brundage always loses in very strange way, like the Mansour Abdul Malik fight. It's a close fight, then he gets headbutt, stuff like that. So I don't think McConico is that good. 10-3-1 is not the cleanest record. He had a loss against Nursultan Ruzaboyev, who's kind of a similar style to Susurkaev. And I don't think Susurkaev is all that good. I think he's a little overrated. He came up through... I thought he came up through ACA, but it was ACA's Prospects promotion called Young Eagles or something like that, which is kind of a crazy name. Could you imagine if Cage Warriors called their prospects Young Notorious? It's crazy how much they love Khabib there. But yeah, I'll go with Susurkaev. I think he's a better fighter. I think he's got a good style to finish McConico, which is probably why he's given this fight. But I do think Susurkaev is a little bit overrated. His regional career isn't the craziest. Usually when you see guys out of ACA, you'll see a win against a guy who's at the time 2-0 to make him 2-1, and then you look at the other guy's career now, and now the guy's 14-1 and his only losses to the UFC prospect. But if you look at a lot of the guys that Susurkaev fought on the come up, a lot of them retired after that fight, or have only had losses, or have had mixed results since their fight. So he's not the level of prospect that Chimaev was, with wins over Aliskarov and stuff like that. But his skills are definitely good. He's a little open on the feet. He's willing to trade, which I think will help him in this fight, but probably hurt him down the road. But it's middleweight, so I could see him going on a run, and he's pretty young, so he's probably going to improve. So I think he's going to get an easy win here, and then maybe struggle in his next couple. Next fight at the card, we got Angela Hill versus Fatima Kline. I'm going with Fatima Kline. She's a big favorite for a reason. Angela Hill, I think, is a little bit washed. Yeah, she doesn't look good recently. She beat Ketlin Souza, but I never thought Ketlin Souza was all that good. She beat Denise Gomes. Denise Gomes isn't all that good. Her recent wins aren't the best in the world. And she's looked pretty bad in fights against Yasmin Lucindo. Yasmin Lucindo had a pretty shitty performance, I think, either right before that fight. Lost to Tabitha Ritchie clearly, which is, like, if you're losing to Tabitha Ritchie clearly, you're not a very good fighter. I mean, I guess she beat Hebas, but that was kind of a weird knockout. But, like, Tabitha Ritchie, usually when she wins, it's like a robbery split decision over, like, Tisha Torres. So, losing clearly to her, not a very good look. I think Fatima Kline's actually pretty good. She's definitely improving. She had that short notice fight against Jasmine Shudavicius up weight class. It didn't look good in that one, but since then, she beat Victoria Dudakova by finish. It was a bad performance by Dudakova, but good performance by Fatima Kline. I was pretty impressed by that. I was surprised she was such a big favorite, but she dominated the fight and got a pretty clear win. And then she got a head kick finish in her last fight. I think she's pretty good. I think she's improving. I think Angel Hill is getting worse and was never that good to start. And yeah, her record is like, I don't know, she's got like 15 or like 30 fights in the UFC, and she's like 15-15 or something like that, which is crazy because, like, you'll hear about a guy like Shavkat, or even like in boxing, you hear a lot like, 29 wins, 28 KOs. Someone has like a 96% finish rate. And then you look at Angel Hill and it's like, oh, it's a 96% decision boring fight rate, which is kind of crazy. But, I guess the UFC will do what they want. They'll waste their money if they want. But I'll go with Fatima Kline. She's probably the much better fighter. Next fight up the card, Chepe Mariscal versus Pat Sabatini. I'm going with Mariscal. I think Sabatini's pretty chinny. Didn't he get like head kicked and then finished on the ground by Damon Jackson in the first like minute? Not a very good look. I don't know if that's exactly how the fight played out, but against Diego Lopez, like, he got his first takedown stuffed, and then immediately got chinned, and he didn't get hit that hard. And I know, Diego Lopez is kind of wild power for 145, but he didn't get hit that hard, and he got rocked real bad. And then he took like 2 shots of clean ground and pound and got put out cold, which is not a very good look. So I don't know if Chepe Mariscal is all that as powerful as Diego Lopez. So if he finds like a similar shot, I don't think he's going to get the finish easily. But I do think he's pretty strong. I think he's about as strong as Diego Lopez, and he's got a better frame for stuffing takedowns. And if Sabatini is going to struggle that much after his first takedown gets stuffed against a guy like Diego Lopez, if Mariscal stuffs the first few takedowns, I could see him, having some pretty good success. He looked really strong against like Jack Jenkins. He did a lot of good work on the clinch against Ricardo Ramos and Morgan Charriere. And Damon Jackson, he completely dominated, like 30-26, 30-25. So, if he's going to have that success against those guys, I think Sabatini's better than all of them. But I think Mariscal's got a good matchup for this, and he looked really good. So, and I say Sabatini's better than Damon Jackson, and he lost to Damon Jackson. And also, Sabatini lost their first fight. I'm pretty sure they fought in LFA before they were both in the UFC, obviously. And Mariscal won the first one by split decision. So I'm going to pick him to, I think he'll get a finish, though. I think Sabatini's been beat up by strong guys recently, and Mariscal has looked very, very good. Like, I think it's a little bit understated how good of a run he's on. Charriere fight was close, but Charriere is pretty good. The Jack Jenkins fight was close before the injury, but Jack Jenkins is pretty good. And then he dominated Damon Jackson, and he had a really good performance against Ricardo Ramos. So I think he's pretty legit. Next fight up the card, we got Gerald Meerschaert versus Cal Daukaus. Yeah, like both these guys, like Meerschaert's coming off of probably the worst performance of his career against Michal Oleksiejczuk, and Cal Daukaus probably coming off the best fight of his career against Michel Pereira. So I'm gonna pick Daukaus. I think he's just on his way to being a better fighter. Usually when people get cut from the UFC and then take some time off, they usually come back to the UFC about as good as they were before, maybe a little better. You have some exceptions like Yusuf Salal, who I think improved a lot. Like, I think Salal was good when he got cut, but he's even better than before. And you got people like Mizuki in a way who took a bunch of time off and came back better. And I was skeptical of Daukaus because that's a pretty rare thing. In MMA, usually when people get cut from the UFC, they get pretty demotivated and they fight cans and then they get re-signed, like Chris Matinho or whatever. But Daukaus looked really improved in his last fight. He looked powerful. I never thought Michel Pereira was, a very chinny guy. I can't remember times where he's been like rocked real bad in the feet. And Cal Daukaus finished him like clean in the first round. He caught him with a clean left hook. Didn't put a ton of power into it and rocked him real bad, dropped him, and then landed a couple good ground and pound elbows and finished him. And if he can keep that cleanliness on the feet, I can see him catching Gerald Meerschaert. I'm a little worried about the striking, just because Daukaus, again, like, was never the best striker. He looked good in his last fight, but before, when he was in the UFC, he wasn't a great striker. He was looking good against Kevin Holland and stuff like that, but he wasn't like a knockout artist, to say the least. And he was a little bitch made. Like, you can kind of like bully him around. He was kind of, I mean, you can kind of see it in his face. Like, he's not like a Anthony Hernandez, or I guess he'd be kind of bitch Anthony Hernandez, but you know what I mean. Like, he's not the best, marauder. I don't know. And Meerschaert has decent success on the feet when he's able to pressure a guy when he's walking forward. Against Bruno Silva was backing up for a lot of the fight, and Meerschaert was able to push him back with a 1-2 and then land a body kick on the way out. And he did kind of a similar thing against Andre Petrosky. So I could see him having that success against Daukaus, but that's about it. Against Makhachev, when he was getting punched in the body, he started shooting like really, really bad takedowns, basically just dropping to his knees and like reaching for the legs, not even moving forward at all. And Daukaus is a really good darce, so I can see Meerschaert getting submitted if he gets maybe rocked, or if he's starting to get beat up. I can see him shooting a bad takedown and getting caught in like a front choke, like a ninja choke or a darce or an anaconda or a guillotine or whatever. So I don't mind Daukaus by submission. I think that's a pretty likely result. Meerschaert rarely goes out cold. Only time I can really remember him going out cold was against Chimaev, and that was like a perfect punch. So if he gets rocked like he did against Oleksiejczuk, I could see him, either shooting a bad takedown or dropping to his back and then getting finished from there. Next fight of the card, we've got Malcolm Wellmaker versus Cody Haddon. I think Cody Haddon's really good. He's not very proven. I think a lot of people are looking at this as like the will Wellmaker get fraud checked by his first like legit opponent, but I think Wellmaker's a little bit more proven than Cody Haddon. Cody Haddon fought Dan Argueta in his last fight. He fought, did he fight Nick Aguirre? No, he fought Billy Brand, that's who it was, on the Contender Series. He's not that good. What's his name? Dan Argueta is not that good either. And then Wellmaker fought Cameron Simon, who I think is better than both Argueta and Billy Brand. So I think he's a little more proven than Haddon. And I think Wellmaker is just a guy you kind of got to be, like, really switched on against. Like, he's going to come at you, like, he's on a pretty long first 2 rounds finish streak. Like, he's finished since, like, 2023. He's had, like, 5 fights, and all of them were first or second round finishes. And against a fighter like that, especially at, like, a lower weight class where that's pretty rare, you want to be really switched on. And I think that Cody Haddon just taking so much time off is not going to be ready for a guy like Wellmaker. Now, I will say I think Wellmaker is kind of similar to Peyton Tabit, where he's got some performances in the regional scene that'll tell you, like, oh, this guy's kind of ready to get fraud checked, like he's ready to get kind of like styled on. And we saw Peyton Tabit have that against Hani Barcelos. But I don't know if Cody Haddon's that guy. I don't think he has a great style for like dominating a guy who's going to be, switched on with power the entire fight. I think that's going to be the story. It's going to be Haddon. He's going to have some success early. He's going to look like the cleaner, more technical guy, and then he's just going to get, dropped, and maybe dropped a couple times. Like, I could see this being like Peyton Tabit versus Cameron Simon, where Cameron Simon's like, winning 60% of his exchanges, but in the 40% of the exchanges he's losing, he's getting clipped by like a big punch or a big knee or something, and it's dropping him. So he gets dropped like 2 or 3 times, and then the fight gets stopped. I don't know. Haddon's not as open on the feet. I actually think he's a lot more technical on the feet than Cameron Simon. But I think Simon's got more tools, so he might be the better fighter. I don't know. Or at least he might be the better matchup for Wellmaker, especially with all the time off that Cody Haddon's taken. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Wellmaker by a first round finish, I think. I don't know. I just don't like the ring rust against a guy who's as dangerous and as, on a roll. So, yeah, I'll go with Wellmaker. Next fight up the card, we've got Erin Blanchfield versus Tracy Cortez. 2, I guess it's a rematch. I'm pretty sure Tracy Cortez won the first fight. I'm not going to pick her to win again in this fight. And I'm not entirely sure why. She's got a decent style for winning, in that, like, when the fight is really boring, she usually edges it out. Like the Jasmine Jasdovicius fight, her last fight against Viviane Araujo. When basically nothing goes on and it's like a boring kickboxing match, she usually wins. She usually gets the better of the exchanges. And Blanchfield has kind of resorted to that in her last couple fights. Like the Mana Fiora fight, she basically did nothing the entire fight. And, lost because she shot for like 3 takedowns in 25 minutes. And none of them were like double legs. It was all like shots into the clinch. And then the Rose Namajunas fight, she did win that fight, but she lost the first 2 rounds, and this is a 3-round fight. So if she loses the first 2 rounds of this fight and doesn't get a finish in the third, she'll lose. And she did more of the same, which is, you go out there and have a shitty kickboxing performance. But she did end up like figuring out like, okay, I'm not winning this. Let me shoot some takedowns and get some control, and that's how she beat Namajunas. And Tracy Cortez like just clearly lost all 5 rounds against Rose Namajunas and got cracked pretty bad in the first round. And I think Blanchfield probably has wisened up to be like, okay, I'm not going to win. She's fought Tracy Cortez before. She probably knows she's not going to win a striking match, and she needs to resort to the grappling. So I'm going to pick her to do that, and just hopefully he isn't retarded and like shoots a couple takedowns, because like I think Jasmine Jasnovicius is a pretty good wrestler, and she didn't do any grappling against Tracy Cortez and lost. And I think Viviana Araujo is a pretty decent grappler and didn't do any wrestling and lost. So if Blanchfield has like more than 60 IQ, she should know to shoot a takedown and win the fight. But does she is the question. I'll pick her to win. I don't know. She figured it out against Namajunas. I think she'll figure it out in this fight, especially because she's fought Cortez before. So I'll pick Blanchfield probably by a boring decision. Also, Tracy Cortez is fucking busted. She's like a 4 out of 10. Next up the card, I got Roman Kopylov versus Gregory Rodrigues. I'm going to go with G-Rod, Obama, because Roman Kopylov kind of struggles a lot when his opponents have like a finishing potential and they move forward a lot. You think of the Paulo Costa fight, like most recently. Paulo Costa, whenever he fights a southpaw, has the lead body kick, or like the open side body kick, that lands really well. And because that was hurting Kopylov, he just refused to move forward and like throw. So the fight was pretty boring, and he did basically nothing the whole fight just because he was afraid of getting hit. And he also did that against Cesar Almeida. He won that fight with the grappling, but on the feet he was getting completely outclassed against a guy in Cesar Almeida who hasn't looked that amazing on the feet. Like had a kind of close fight with Yor Poitier where he needed like 5 fouls and almost got finished on the feet by Abdul Razak Al Hassan. And Kopylov looked clueless on the feet against him because Almeida was moving forward and had good power and finishing potential, and Kopylov was kind of gun shy. And if there's a guy in the division that's like a most, the quintessential move forward and have finishing potential guy, it is Gregory Rodrigues, who's coming off of a big knockout win against Jack Hermanson. And in that fight, he wasn't afraid to throw at all, even though he was coming off of being finished, only like 6 months before. And since he hasn't been finished since, February or whatever, now, he'd probably be even more confident and move forward even more. So, I don't know if he's going to finish Kopylov, but I do think Kopylov will be really gun shy. I think it'll be a lot of like leg kicks and like jab feints. And he'll just get behind it. And he's not the best like come back out of nowhere, get a finish. I know he did that against Chris Curtis, which is probably his most recent win and his most recent like pretty dangerous striker he fought. But Chris Curtis does a lot of fighting off the back foot. He's also not very good at like cutting off the cage when he's moving forward. Like you saw that in the Jack Hermanson fight. Like he literally couldn't hit Jack Hermanson at all because Hermanson just refused to engage in like the most simple way. So it's not like a big surprise that Kopylov had a lot of striking success on the feet, and then was able to find that big kick at the end. That was kind of a weird stoppage, but he would have won the fight anyway, so I'm not that miffed. But yeah, I'll pick Gregory Rodrigues. Good pressure, good finishing potential. Kopylov gets really gun shy against those guys. I think Rodrigues is a good style to beat him. I don't know if he's like I said, I don't know if he gets the finish. What I was saying with the Cesar Almeida fight is Kopylov won that fight by grappling because he couldn't get any success in the feet. But I don't think he's going to easily out-grapple Gregory Rodrigues. And if he, does attempt like a bad takedown, I could see him ending up on bottom. And you don't want to be on bottom against a guy who's as powerful as Rodrigues and who has a lot of like, fast twitch muscle, like short space leverage. So I'll go with Rodrigues. Next fight of the card, Bo Nickal, versus Rodolfo Vieira. I'm going to go with Bo Nickal. I think this is about where he is as a middleweight. He had a decent first round against Randy Ritter, who went on to, fight in like probably a title eliminator. Or, at least the fight was probably going to be a title eliminator if he won. And yeah, I mean, that's not a terrible performance. I don't think Vieira has a ton of success against Reiner Ritter. Maybe he doesn't get finished as easily as Bo Nickal did, but Vieira's not a very good fighter. I think this fight's going to be similar to the Paul Craig fight in that Bo Nickal will just slightly win on the feet in all 3 rounds, just by winning, like, he'll probably outland every round by, like, 19-15 or something like that. Vieira is similar to Paul Craig, where he doesn't have a ton of options on the feet. He doesn't have like a ton of variety in his strikes. It's a lot of like outside low kicks, jabs, 1-2s. He looked good against Tracy Gore, who's not a terrible guy to look good against. But he didn't look very good against Andre Petrosky. He probably should have won that fight, but he didn't look very good. He didn't use his grappling at all. And also, a lot of people are thinking that probably that Bo Nickal is going to get submitted because he lost to a grappler in his last fight, and I guess that's how it works. But I know Vieira's a good grappler. However, all of his submissions that he has in the UFC, or at least in MMA, have been arm triangles and submissions from the top, like rear naked chokes, like submissions from dominant position, which requires him to get dominant position. And I think Bo Nickal's a good enough grappler that he's not going to just give up, mount or give up his back really easily. So I think the fight will be boring on the feet, and maybe if it's close in the striking, Bo Nickal will shoot a couple takedowns and just stay on top. His desire to advance position in his last fight kind of got him put on bottom against Reiner Ritter, which I think is a bad idea. And I think he is probably tentative to do that again. So I think he will probably just hold position in half guard or even just in full guard. I don't think there's that much of a submission threat off of Vieira's back. So yeah, I think Bo Nickal will just very boringly win this fight. And people are like, why would they put this as the featured prelim? This fight sucked. But yeah. Next fight up the card, Beneil Dariush versus Benoit Saint-Denis. I'm going Benoit. And the reason why is because in Beneil's recent fights, especially the Moicano fight, he's allowed himself to just be pinned against, even the Oliveira fight too. He's allowed himself to just be pinned against the cage the entire fight and fight off the back foot. And he beat Moicano by being the slicker boxer and just using decent counter striking in that position. But Moicano doesn't really have a lot of variety to his strikes. He's a lot of just simple boxing combos, like a 1-2 slip uppercut and shit like that. And Beneil's pretty good at beating a slower striker in that way. And Benoit is a slow striker, but he's got a little bit more variety in what he does. When I say variety, I mean he throws body kicks a lot. And I think that will require Dariush to get away from that. You can't just let Benoit tee off on you against the cage, even if you're gonna land some good counters. Just because those body kicks hurt so much, and a couple of them can finish you. Yeah, I don't really see Dariush having a ton of success, taking down Benoit. I think Benoit's a pretty good wrestler. He looked really good against Poirier, even better than Makhachev looked. So, yeah, I think Benoit will win this. I think he's just he's got a better style on the feet, and I think the grappling's pretty even, and I think he might be a better wrestler. At least I think the difference between his offensive wrestling and versus Benoit's defense wrestling, and the difference between that and the difference between I can't talk. I think his matchup in the wrestling is better, at least if he goes offensively. I think he will be able to stuff Beneil's takedowns easier than Beneil will be able to stuff his. So if he shoots, I think he'll get success, and if Beneil shoots, I think he will have less success, basically. And then on the feet, like I said, I think Beneil doesn't move a ton. That allows you to get kicked pretty easily. It allows you to be predictable for takedowns. I know Gamrot has kind of a similar style, throws a good amount of kicks, and he got caught throwing a kick. It's just how often does that really happen, So yeah, and I think Benoit's a little bit faster with his kicks. He's a little bit, maybe not cleaner with his boxing, but more a tenacious and more of a marauder. So if Beneil doesn't move, he's going to get hurt. And if he does move, I think he can get taken down, and he'll struggle to take down and hold down Benoit. So we haven't really seen Benoit a ton off his back. But against Poirier, as soon as he started to, as soon as he got the takedown, he got control, he was able to pass and find Poirier's back pretty easily, which again, Makhachev struggled to do. So I'm going to go with Benoit. Next fight up the card, we've got Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates. I'm going to go with Carlos Prates. I think Leon Edwards is pretty chinny. He's also not the most. I think he has pretty bad style on the feet for Prates. Before I talk about that, I think a lot of people are thinking that Edwards will take Protez down because Edwards had good grappling against Usman in the rematch when he took down Usman in the first fight, or in the second fight, I guess. But I think Carlos Protez has really good takedown defense. We saw it against Ian Gary. We saw it against Neil Magny. Anytime he gets like a takedown threat, he drops and hits a switch. And it worked really well until I think he didn't get taken down until like the fourth round against Ian Gary. And even when he got taken down, he got up pretty quick. He didn't get controlled a ton. And yeah, I don't think Edwards has shown that he has great takedown offense. The one takedown we've seen him hit, like in a high-level fight, is the one against Usman. And he took down Usman once, and Usman took him down like 19 times. So, I'm not particularly impressed by that. Also, that was like, I think that was a result more of Usman being surprised that Edwards was trying to take him down and, hit him with an outside trip in the clinch against the cage. I think if they just had like a wrestling match, he wouldn't take down Usman a single time. So I don't think Edwards is like going to easily take down and control Protez. And then when it comes down the feet, the reason why I was thinking JDM might beat Belal is because Edwards was against Belal was so hesitant against the cage. He would get like Belal would literally just walk up to him, like switching, like crossing his legs, walking up to him, and Edwards would just go against the cage and shell up, and then take a couple punches and get ready to throw back. But he was so hesitant that Belal could literally just like do a little bit of a feint, see exactly what kind of guard Edwards is using, and then like punch, lead uppercuts through the guard, and stuff like that. And Edwards was so slow and hesitant and like obvious with his defense that it made Belal like super easy, like able to just tag him up. And Belal has no power. And then when you see Edwards against guys who have like minimal power, like Nate Diaz or Brian Barberena, or I don't know, like those are basically. Brian Barberena is basically the only striker Edwards has fought since he fought Brian Barberena, and he rocked him really bad. And then Nate Diaz rocked Edwards really bad in the fifth round. I just think that Edwards puts himself in a not very good position to defend shots, and then he gets off on like decent defensive technique. But I just think that's a bad idea against a guy who's as good at feinting and as good at setting up traps as Protez. I think what will happen is, another thing is Edwards throws his arms out a lot to do to grab arms. He did that against Usman a ton, and when Usman would pressure him against the cage, he would reach out and grab both of his arms and then try to throw knees and stuff like that. But Protez used that technique a ton. He did it against Jeff Neal a lot. He landed elbows in that position. He landed knees in that position. So I don't think Edwards is going to have a ton of success in that position. Edwards also didn't look very good in the clinch against Sean Brady, which used to be his strong suit, like against Cerrone. He landed a lot of good elbows in the clinch. Knees in the clinch against Nate Diaz, kind of the same thing. Cerrone did hit him with a head kick out of the clinch, like clean, and I did grab his glove when he did that. But I think Protez will have a lot of success in the clinch just because of how much worse Edwards has looked in that position. And then also, like I said, like Edwards against Belal bit on feints so hard that it just made him very predictable and easy to hit. Which I think will happen against Protez. I think Edwards will try to move around a lot more against Protez, but I think Protez will start to beat up the leg, and then it'll be like, oh shit, Edwards is kind of got to catch up. He's going to get behind in the rounds. He doesn't do a ton, so if he starts to get behind, it's hard for him to catch up. And then once he gets behind and his leg starts to get chewed up, he'll try to stick around and like slip a punch instead of move out of the way. And I think that'll just leave him open to get hit. I think what will happen is Protez will feint. I think he will throw a knee. I think what will happen is Edwards will be like a step off the cage. So he'll be like a full stride away from the cage. Protez will move towards him, feint. Edwards will shell up. Protez will throw a knee, and then when Protez throws a knee, Edwards is going to back up all the way against the cage to get all the way to the knee. And then as Protez plants his foot from the knee, he's going to switch stances and then throw, with his now lead hand, throw a straight punch, and it'll completely like put Edwards out cold. He did that a couple times against Jeff Neal, and I think because he got the finish so soon after, people didn't really realize how successful that technique was. But about 20 seconds before he finished Jeff Neal, and then about 20 seconds before that, he does a lift knee and then follows up with a straight right, which is now his lead hand, but it's like a power jab, while he's switching stances, and it lands super clean, and it rocks Jeff Neal the first time, and then it lands clean again the second time, and then he gets the finish. So, yeah, I don't think Edwards has the ability to move around and then punish with his movement. as Ian Gary, and then also this is a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight. So I think that like dump that we saw from Cortez in the 5th round, where he's like, I gotta go get a finish, that will happen earlier in the fight because he doesn't have to worry about gassing out in the 2nd and 3rd rather than like the 4th and 5th because the fight's so much shorter. So I think Cortez will have a much better chance of finding Edwards than he had against Ian Gary, and even then, this is a 3-round fight, so if in the last round he has like a big moment where he almost finishes Edwards, he just has to win 1 or 2 if he's going to win the 3rd. So, yeah, I think he'll get a finish. I think Edwards is really underratedly chinny. He hasn't fought any strikers in so much time, and the last guy who had like a long striking match with him that wasn't like a fucking ditz was Nate Diaz. And Nate Diaz had a horrible performance in that fight, but he went for like one smart combination, just a left hook right hand as Edwards was shelling up, and it landed perfectly on the chin and rocked him really bad. And that's Nate Diaz, who doesn't finish fucking anyone. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Cortez by finish. Next fight of the card, we got Sean Brady versus Michael Morales. I'm going Sean Brady. I think he's way more proven. I will say Michael Morales has been improving at a level that is like, unseen at like this high, maybe not high level division, but like in welterweight, you never see a guy go from like having a close, boring fight with Sean Brady and looking like a fucking amateur against Trevin Giles. Or not Sean Brady, Jack Matheus. And then he goes in against Neil Magny, and he looks strong in the clinch, and he goes for a spinning elbow and drops him and finishes him. And this is when Magny was hard to finish. And then, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, and then he goes against Gilbert Burns and looks completely dominant, beats the fuck out of him, and finishes him in the 1st round. And I will say, if Michael Morales has that kind of performance against Sean Brady, he's going to finish him in the 1st, because Sean Brady against Beneil broke super easily. As soon as he got hurt on the feet a little bit, he just kind of gave up. But I do think Sean Brady is maybe the best grappler when it comes to like finishes at 170 right now. His ability to just like get on top of someone and finish them is pretty impressive. He didn't look great against Kelvin Gastelum. It took him until like late in the 2nd, and he did give up position at one point in the 1st round. But Kelvin Gastelum is a lot like worse of a frame to attack from on top. A guy who's taller like Michael Morales is easier to like scale when you're on top of him. Paul City, by the way. But yeah, I think that Michael Morales will be easier to take down, control, and finish than Kelvin Gastelum was, kind of like Leon Edwards. And I think that Sean Brady looked really good. He didn't really go for any grappling in the first like 3 minutes of the fight. But after that, he got a takedown in the clinch against Edwards, dominated the rest of the 1st round after he got his takedown. And in the 2nd round, did he get a finish in the 3rd? I think he did more of the same in the 2nd round, where he just took him down and held him down. And then whenever he got the finish, he just took him down. He was in half guard, and then he, got the underhook and then put his other arm under Edwards' head and then get an arm and guillotine from half guard. I think he stepped over into mount during the submission. But yeah, he looked really dominant on the ground, and I think that Mike Morales, based on the level that he was at like 3 years ago, I don't think is nearly at a good enough level. Even if he's improved as much in his grappling as he has in his striking, or just in his general abilities, if he's improved everything, at the level that he's improved his striking, I still don't think he's going to be good enough to prevent himself from getting finished by Sean Brady, a guy who's just so hard to not get finished against on the ground. And yeah, I think that's about all. He does have a background in judo, so his takedown defense could be pretty good. But I think that Brady has a good style of takedown defense or offense for a guy who's going to like try to do like trips on the feet. Brady does a lot of like single legs into double legs or single legs into the clinch, and then he does an inside trip or runs the pipe or whatever. So he has like a good system for getting takedowns, and I think that'll work good against Guy and Morales. Like a lot of judo fighters don't really have that same ability to like chain takedowns and stuff like that. So I don't think that his background helps him a ton against Sean Brady. I'm gonna get a drink 1 second. All right, next fight of the card, we got the co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili. I'm going Zhang Weili. I think Shevchenko's pretty overrated when it comes to being a technician. I think because she's fought so many bums, people think of her as like a very technical, high-level fighter. I don't think she's like a very low-level fighter, but for women's flyweight, she's probably the most skilled ever. It's just such a low-skilled division that I think that like she's been the scale's kind of thrown off, or people think she's like as high level as some of the 115 fighters, when she's really not. And because of that, I think that Zhang Weili will have the technique advantage, and I think that's basically all she needs to win this fight. Shevchenko's not much of a finisher anymore, and if she's not able to, I think she's going to lose on the feet because she's pretty not great on the feet. She looked really bad against basically all the fighters that aren't like shit. Or even the fighters that are shit, like against Vieira, who I don't think is that good. She didn't look very good on the feet. Against Grasso in the second fight, she looked like shit on the feet. So yeah, like I think that like if she looks bad on the feet, which she usually does, she'll lose to Zhang Weili on the feet. And then if she can't get her takedowns, I think that she's gonna, I guess lose on the feet. Like the fight will continue to be on the feet. And if she starts to gas out by failing takedowns, it's gonna be even worse. Yeah, and she also makes a lot of bad decisions. Like she does this fucking thing where if she's backed up against the cage, she throws a spinning back kick or a spinning side kick, which just leaves you to get your back taken and finished, which is what Grasso did, and how Tyler Santos made the fight kind of close. So yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this fight because I think both these fighters are pretty shit. Or I'm sorry, I don't think Weili's that shit, but I think Shevchenko's kind of overrated and she doesn't really do a ton. Like in the main event floor fight, like name like 3 things that happened in that fight, and in the like all the fights where she doesn't just like take down her opponent and hold them down in side control, she looks like shit on the feet and then wins a close decision. And I don't think she's gonna be able to take down and hold down Zhang Weili in side control. So I think Weili has, like I said, the advantage on the feet. And like against what's her name, Tatiana Suarez, who for some reason was a favorite in that fight, she was able to stuff pretty much all of the takedowns, and when she got taken down, she got right back up. And then later in the fight, she was even getting dominant grappling positions herself. So I don't think Shevchenko is that similar to Suarez, because Suarez actually gets finishes. But I think that her takedown system is pretty similar, and maybe she's stronger than Suarez, but I don't know. She's probably like a by the book, less technical grappler. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Zhang Weili probably by decision. I don't see either of them getting a finish, even if it's a close fight. I know Shevchenko has gotten some close decisions before, but against Grasso, who was like, they're trying to build the Mexican fighting market. They gave Grasso a draw in a fight she probably should have lost, and they're probably trying to build the Chinese fighting market. And if this fight is a close fight, they'll probably just give the fight to Zhang Weili. So, Zhang Weili's fought like actually technically good fighters before in Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Rose Namajunas, and she probably should have beaten Namajunas in the second fight. And she very clearly beat Jędrzejczyk in their fight, in their first fight and their second fight. And she's definitely improved since then. So I think Shevchenko, who's less technical than both of them, will just look worse. And if she can't get the takedowns, she's going to be like, I don't want to say lost in the feet, because the fight will probably just be like her getting slightly out damaged. But she's not a very technical fight. Like I think she's very over, because she knocked out Jessica I, who like my fucking grandma would knock out. People think she's like some like technical finishing savant on the feet, when she looks like shit. Like I think because she throws a spinning back kick, people are like, oh, she's like John Jones, or she's like fucking GSP. When no, like that's a low IQ dumb thing to do, and it makes her look worse. But I don't know. She's very overrated, I think, and she's fought basically bombs her entire career. Like she got a title fight off beating fucking Priscilla Cachoeira in Cachoeira's debut. So yeah, whatever. I'm going to go with Zhang Weili. On to the main event, the fight actually we care about. It's one of the fights I'm more excited about ever. Let's get straight into it. I think it's going to be a pretty even fight. Generally, I could see either of them getting finished early on. I think if one of them gets finished early, it's going to be Makhachev, because JDM's got really good power and he's got good setups early in the fight. But I'll go through a couple matchup things. First of all, JDM trains with Craig Jones, so I'm going to base a lot of his grappling habits based on what I know about Craig Jones and what I've seen since JDM has started training with him. And a lot of the grappling that the JDM does is momentum based. It's like you hit the ground, you try to move when you hit the ground, try to create a scramble, get up, which I think is a generally good thing for MMA grappling. A guy like Islam, who is really dangerous when he gets on top of you, and a lot of the Dagestani guys are pretty like permeable to scrambles. We saw that with Umar and Bautista. Umar would get a dominant position, Bautista would create a scramble and he would get free. Even what's his name, Beksat Almakan, is that the guy he fought, Umar? When scrambles happened, Umar would lose position, generally. And I think that's just generally a good thing to do against high-level good grapplers. Where it's not good, unfortunately for JDM, is in Darce chokes. Makhachev has a really good Darce choke. He has a good short arm Darce. He's one of the only guys in MMA who uses the short arm Darce, which is basically where you put your elbow on their brainstem and then you connect it with your other arm, and you have a Darce that's a little bit less tight but has a lot more leverage and squeeze. So if you've never been in Darce before, it kind of fucking hurts. Like, it doesn't, not only chokes you, but it also kind of contorts your neck in a weird way. And the short arm Darce does that even more, which is why you saw Moicano like panic tap right when he got put in the submission, just because it's so uncomfortable, and it feels so much tighter than it is, which is worrying with JDM because he got caught in a Darce real bad by what's his name, Ramazan Ameev, who's been cut from the UFC, but is another Dagestani fighter. He got put in a Darce real bad, and he used good defense, but he was in it like a locked-in deep Darce. And I'd be worried about him getting put in one again, just because since the Ameev fight, he started training with Craig Jones, and a lot of Craig Jones' defense is, like I said, creating scrambles, and a lot of his get-ups are attack a single leg. Here's a thing that I'll cover. I think this will be a big deal. When JDM is in bottom half guard, he uses a system that a lot of the like former Danaher Death Squad guys like Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan use, which is like the knee lever sweep combined with the techno stand-up. So basically, Jack Slack has a great video on this if you want to get a better deep dive. But there's a sweep that you can use off your back in half guard that Mansour Barnaoui used a lot against Islam Makhachev in their fight, and he also used against one of Islam's teammates and won that fight. Barnaoui had a really close fight with Makhachev in M1, but yeah, the sweep is when you're in bottom half guard, you control their post hand, and then you basically do like a bench press on their opposite shoulder, and it like throws them over yourself, and you can stand up. And the only way to prevent it from being on top is to give them a lot of space and go like farther towards the side control side, which allows them to like stand up on a single leg, which is how like JDM and Craig Jones get up a lot from being on bottom, is they attack a single leg or they use the knee lever sweep. He actually used it against Belal in the 5th round when he got taken down early. He was in bottom half guard, and he used that sweep to get up. The thing is, attacking a single leg from bottom leaves you very open to Darce chokes. So if he gets put in that position, I could see him getting up from there. I can see him using the sweep. I can see him using the tactical stand-up or the single leg. But I could also see him getting Darce in there, which does worry me. Another thing in the grappling, another matchup they have that's interesting is Makhachev, when he trained with Khabib, he spent a lot of time with his back against the cage because Khabib was putting a lot of people against the cage, and he developed a good system for getting off the cage that he used against Arman Tsarukyan, which is a lot of judo throws. And he even uses a lot of them like not against the cage, or when he's pressing his opponent against the cage rather than himself. So he does a lot of Sasai Komiyashi, he does a lot of Uchimata, I don't know all those names, but he does a lot of foot sweeps and inside trips and outside trips from judo positions, which I think JDM will be very good against because Craig Jones also uses a ton of judo trips. That's his main system for getting takedowns. So I think that JDM has a good counter to that style. And when Makhachev didn't use a ton of judo trips against Dustin Poirier, he did a lot of traditional wrestling. And Dustin Poirier stuffed those takedowns really well. And Islam didn't seem very good at a traditional, outside high crotch single leg or a traditional double leg, which is where you see a lot of the Team Khabib guys get their takedowns in other fights. Like Umar does a lot of traditional wrestling takedowns. Khabib did a ton of traditional wrestling takedowns. Whereas, Makhachev has a lot more success in the judo throws and the, shoot for a single and then go for a run the pipe, or then go for an inside trip, or then, go for a into the clinch and then do a Sasai Komiyashi, which is what he did against Arman Tsarukyan. So I think that JDM's takedown defense against Gilbert Burns and against Belal looked really good in traditional wrestling. And also, I think that his takedown defense against Makhachev's specialty in those judo throws is sublime. I think it's probably going to be pretty good because we've seen it be pretty good so far. And we know he trains with Craig Jones, and that's Craig Jones' forte. So this is the matchup in the grappling. I think that I think that the JDM will look really good. In the striking, it's an interesting thing because obviously we know that Makhachev is a grappler first. He's got good striking, but he's always had like the takedown defense the takedown threat in his favor. Like, is he a better striker than Volkanovski? Maybe not, but he did win a mainly striking match with Volkanovski. I mean, I would say Volkanovski probably won the striking in the first fight, but he did finish Volkanovski in the second fight. Context, I know. That was short notice. That was up a weight class, whatever. But he did, he is a good striker, I think, objectively. I think most people can agree to that. However, I think JDM has a very good style at beating up people who aren't like, haven't trained striking for a significant amount of their life. Like, I don't think he would do very good in striking against a guy like Ilya or a guy like maybe Cortez. But the in and out head movement, the ducking, the shifting the whole body weight, I think that's very hard to deal with for a guy like Makhachev who hasn't been striking his whole life. And I think that JDM will find a lot of success striking off slips. And I think Makhachev's main counter will be head kicks. Obviously, we saw him get a head kick finish against Volkanovski. But the problem for Makhachev is that he's opposite stance. He fights mainly out of southpaw for most of his fights. And when he got the head kick against Volkanovski, he had to switch into orthodox because the open stance, like rear leg head kick, would have taken so long, it would have been very predictable. So I think that Makhachev will fight a lot of the fight out of orthodox. And I think that JDM will have a lot more success boxing in a closed stance matchup than he will against an open stance matchup. So if Makhachev wants to counter the head movement with head kicks like he did against Volkanovski, he's going to have to switch stances, and that's going to get him beat up in the striking. I think this is just my opinion maybe, but I think generally it's easier to get underhooks in a closed stance matchup than an open stance matchup. I don't know if that's like a universal truth for everyone, but in my experience, like if you're closed stance and they shoot a takedown, it's easier to like get the, if you're both orthodox, get your left arm under the right arm and then your right arm under the left. If you're in closed stance than it is in open stance. So I think that maybe JDM's takedown defense will be better in a closed stance than an open stance. If I was JDM, I would stay in orthodox the whole fight because Islam's going to want to fight out of southpaw and throw head kicks. And if he's going to throw head kicks in open stance, it's going to be a lot less successful than if he's in a closed stance. And if you make him switch stances, I think it'll be better. So, yeah, and then my general prediction for what's going to happen in this fight, I think there's probably about a 20% chance that JDM gets submitted in the first 3 rounds. I think there's about a 25% chance that JDM knocks out Islam in the first round or 2. And then if the fight goes later in the fight, we haven't really seen, JDM have I guess we kind of did against Ball. He did have good success in the grappling in rounds 4 and 5. Obviously, JDM is a completely different animal. I'm sorry, Islam's a completely different animal than Bilal. He's a lot more well-rounded. But I like the way that JDM was able to push in the 5th round. And he didn't gas super hard. We've never really seen him gas that bad. Same with Islam. But when you look at a 4th and 5th round that Islam had against Poirier, Islam was winning that fight. He was up 3-1 in the 5th round, and he was shooting panic takedowns in the 5th round against Poirier. And he was even shooting panic takedowns in the 4th round against Poirier. And if you look at the moxie and the confidence that JDM had in those 4th and 5th rounds against Bilal, where he's shooting his own takedowns, which was a dumb move, but he has that confidence, and he was able to go out there at the end of the 5th and take the fight home by securing that 5th round and beating him up. If that confident, I don't know, if that dominant style JDM is there in the 4th and 5th round, and that panic takedown, I need a finish, or I'm starting to gas or I'm starting to break, Islam is in the 4th and 5th round, I think JDM finishes him pretty easily. I just think that if Islam got that takedown stuffed by Dustin Poirier, the one that he used to get the Dars at the very end, I think we're looking at a completely different fight. I think Poirier puts it on him at the end of the 5th and maybe gets a 10-8. Maybe we're talking about a draw. Or maybe we're talking about was that a robbery, Whereas, what ended up happening was he got a submission because that was, that's how things played out. But if he didn't get the submission and that takedown, I think he probably would have broke, and we're looking at a completely different fight. And I think JDM, the JDM that was in the 5th round against Bilal Muhammad is stuffing that takedown, and if he's not stuffing that takedown, he's getting up right when he hits the ground. Or he's, getting out of that submission and standing up and breaking Islam. So I'm looking at I think, honestly, one of the more likely scenarios is that JDM finishes him early on. I just think that the type of striking he has is such a... it'll be such a twist for Islam, and I think Ilya would have been kind of a similar story. But I can very well see like a 4th or 5th round finish, or like JDM wins the first and loses the 2nd and 3rd by getting out grappled, and then wins the 4th and 5th because Islam's starting to break and he's starting to like panic takedown. So yeah. What else? Oh, another thing is like I said, Islam is going to probably try to switch stances to land head kicks against Islam, and I'm sure JDM knows that because that's what he did against Volk, and he trains with Volk, and he's training with Volk for this fight. So I think that as soon as Islam switches into orthodox, I think JDM will like switch on super hard. Like I think he'll be like, not only is this the easiest chance I have to box in the pocket because we're a close stance, also I know he's probably going to kick soon, and if I can punch him in the face while he's kicking off of his lead leg, then I can rock him really bad and get a knockdown. So I think that one, he's going to finish him in the first couple rounds with punches, or like that. The two most likely outcomes are that, or I could see him getting a knockdown in the first round because he punched Islam while Islam was kicking, and then, like I said, winning the 4th and 5th because Islam starts to break, and then he wins a close decision. So yeah, I'm super excited for this fight, by the way. I know I love JDM. He's probably like one of my top 3 favorite fighters in the UFC right now. But I also love Islam. He's one of my favorite fighters. If he wins this fight, if he wins this fight and then defends the belt, or if he wins this fight and then goes back down and beats Arman or Ilya or whoever has the belt there, he is the GOAT of this sport, no discussion. If he wins this fight, he's better than, Anderson Silva, Mighty Mouse, Khabib, Aldo. Like he's probably like the 1st or 2nd best fighter in the world ever if he wins this fight. I just want to make that clear. I just think JDM is very underrated. I think he's very good. Like I think the Belal Muhammad JDM that we saw is one of the best fighters that we've ever seen. And I think he's, with the size, with the strength, I think he's going, like, I think a lot of people don't notice that, like, Islam has fought at 155 his whole career. A lot of the guys he fought in the regional scene at 155 were smaller guys. Even guys like Poirier were like shockingly big for Makhachev. So I think this will be like a shock to Makhachev. Like I'm sure he's trained with like a bigger 155ers, especially for this fight, or 170 fighters. But I think it's going to be, like, even you've heard him say, like, oh, I'm definitely not going to 185. That's way too big for me. Like, 170 is big enough. I think it will be I don't think he's ever had a guy as dangerous as JDM, as big and strong as JDM, trying to fucking take his head off. So I think that will be a shock for him. And I think because that JDM will have success early on, and because he's going to have to try so hard to get takedowns and go for success in the grappling, he's going to struggle in the 4th and 5th. So I'm going JDM. But I think if you can find like a prop to get like a Makhachev submission in the first couple rounds, maybe that'll be overrated because people think he'll get his back or something. I don't know. I'm going with JDM though by finish. All right, I went shorter than I thought. I'm gonna go do my predictions for the ONE FC fight. I will be right back. I'm gonna open that up. All right, I'll run through this really quick. I'm only gonna do the fights I care about. I think Shinya Oki's gonna win. I think let's see. There's a lot more fights than I thought. I think Stamp Fairtech's probably going to win. I think Nabil is probably going to win. I think Yukio is probably going to win. I think Murat is probably going to win, but I'm just going to pick Rukia Ampo because I like him more. I think Takeru is probably going to win. I think Christian Lee is probably going to win. I think Rod Tang is probably going to win. I think Nadaka is probably going to win. I think Wakamatsu is probably going to win. And I think Noiri is probably going to win. Okay, is that every fight I cared about? Did the Haggerty fight get canceled? It did. Fuck. That would have been a good fight. And the fucking Rug Malikan rematch got canceled. Whatever. So yeah, those are my predictions for the UFC event, for the ONE event. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments. Let me know if you want to hear more about a certain pick or a certain fight or something in the comments again. You can follow me on Twitter. I'll be live tweeting the event, both events. I have live tweeted like most of combat sports events for the whole year. If you want to go check that out, follow me on Twitter. Link is in the description. What else is there? Like the video, share the video, comment, subscribe. What else? I'm sure there's something else. I don't know. Hopefully it's a good card. It's looking pretty great. There's not a ton of great fights for the rest of the year after these two cards. Yeah, this will be a great weekend of fights. Yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you guys enjoy the card.